Bert Kreischer's first big movie, The Machine, based on his life story, hit theaters this weekend. It stars Bert Kreischer playing himself and Mark Hamill playing his dad. It hasn't done too well on opening weekend, but it's a comedy movie that's essentially a sequel to the story that made him famous, The Machine. Set 23 years after the original story which inspired it, The Machine finds Bert Kreischer facing a family crisis and the arrival of his estranged father when the ghost of his booze-soaked past arrives. A murderous Russian mobster hell-bent on kidnapping Bert back to the motherland to atone for his crimes. The movie stars Bert Kreischer playing himself, Mark Hamill plays his dad, and Jimmy Tatro plays young Bert Kreischer in the flashbacks. This movie's been long awaited by fans of Bert Kreischer and his comedy, but it hasn't done super well at the box office on opening weekend, making just under $5 million for a $35 million movie. But the question is the movie any good? What up, guys? I'm Pete, an actor and a filmmaker. I love movies and I'm reviewing them on YouTube. I try to review one movie a week, so if you enjoy this one, smash that like button, hit subscribe, especially if you're new, and let me know in the comments below what you think of my reviews and also what movies you want me to review. Now, if you know Bert Kreischer, the stand-up comedian, you know the story that made him famous, The Machine. It essentially is a story when he was a Florida State frat boy in college studying Russian, and he takes a class trip to Russia, where he accidentally gets involved with the Russian mafia on a train. They force him to rob the train, but he also achieves legendary status for his hard partying ways. It's a story that basically set the tone for his entire comedic career, and which he really rode the wave of. Every time he gets on stage, he takes his shirt off, he drinks way too much. Almost all his stories have something to do with him partying too hard or drinking too much. And he's essentially become an overage party boy slash frat boy. And it's essentially who Bert Kreischer is as a comedian. Some people love it, some people don't, a lot of people are just indifferent. Now, the movie is essentially a sequel to the story of The Machine, because now, as a grown adult, Bert has to go back to Russia, is forced to go back to Russia, and atone for his crimes. There's flashbacks to the original story of The Machine in there, and it's essentially supposed to be a redemption arc or close the chapter of that story. Now, before I get into what I liked and what I didn't like about this movie, let me just say it's very hard to make a comedy movie nowadays. Studios are very risk averse and they're very scared of getting criticized, of getting canceled, of getting attacked on social media. And the result is that they often end up playing it very safe and going very vanilla with their comedy. And it can sometimes make movies a little bland because they're so scared of taking risks. So it's very hard to make a comedy nowadays without getting canceled, but also being super funny. And I think this movie was a good attempt to do that. I always love it when a stand-up comedian tries to become a comedic actor. It's a very hard thing to do. Comedy on stage doesn't always translate well to acting on screen. Some comedians can do it, some can't. I think Bert Kreischer does a pretty good job here. And I think we do need more comedies. I think we need more comedies that take risk. And I think this movie really tried to do that. It's directed by Peter Atencio, who a lot of people will remember from the Key and Peele TV show. What did I like about this movie? The acting was good. Kreischer does a pretty good job of playing himself, and I think he mostly hits his beats and his notes. His comedic timing is excellent, as you would expect from Bert Kreischer, and he's got a lot of good, pithy one-liners, and he mostly hits those well. Mark Hamill was good too. He's not the center point of the movie, but he plays a good foil to Bert, has a few one-liners as well that are quite funny, and overall I think he does a great job. Jimmy Tatro plays young Bert in the flashbacks, and I think he does a pretty good job of leaning into the frat boy who's not too bright, but he also manages to come off quite sympathetic at times, so I think he nailed it. I think this movie was interesting if you know Bert Kreischer and his career and you've listened to his podcast, Two Bears, One Cave, that he does with Tom Segura, because it is essentially true that this was the story that launched him into being famous as a comedian, and it's sort of a persona that he's leaned very heavily into over the years, and at times he's said, either on podcasts or on other platforms, that he kind of wants to move a little bit away from that, because although that's very much a part of who he is, his real identity, there are other parts of him, and sometimes you do wonder, is that really who Bert Kreischer is, or is he just dialing that up because he knows that that's what his fans have come to love him for? And I think this movie does a pretty good job of trying to take a look at that and going, is that all Bert Kreischer is, or is that somebody that he feels he has to be in order to keep his success going? The movie does a pretty good job of delving into other issues as well. Fatherhood, good fathers, bad fathers. What is it to be a good father? Identity. I thought there was one scene that was really good that sort of tries to discuss the whole idea of identity. And usually we like to pigeonhole people into one identity, but the reality is human beings are multifaceted and complex. And really life is not about finding yourself. It's about accepting the different aspects of your personality and accepting that you are not a one-dimensional person. And I thought that message kind of came through a bit in the movies. It might have felt a little forced at times because they had to jump quickly from like comedy into like a serious conversation and they couldn't dwell on it for too long, or it might ruin the comedic tone. But I thought they found a good balance between the two, and it did make me think. What I didn't like, for a comedy, it's less laugh out loud and more chuckle intermittently. The movie leans quite heavily into like slapstick humor, some bathroom humor as well. And if you enjoy that thing, then that's great. Personally, I don't really find any of that stuff all that funny, but that is most of the movie. There are some really good pithy one-liners though, both from Bert Kreischer and Mark Hamill, and those definitely made me laugh. They just weren't there often enough for me to really enjoy the comedic tone of this movie. I also didn't love that it goes quite hard on Russian stereotypes and Hollywood tropes of Russia. The whole we think Americans are stupid and fat and useless, but we also kind of admire the ones that can party really hard like we do. Some people might say that you want to lean into a stereotype because it's universally recognizable. Personally, I don't agree. I think the move is actually to go opposite stereotypes. Maybe have your main character expecting certain stereotypes and then being surprised when he's faced with the exact opposite. I really think they could have done more of that in this movie, and that would have cranked up the comedy even more, but instead they kind of leaned into everything that you would expect from Hollywood's view of what Russia is. The movie is shot quite well. It looks very cinematic. There's good transitions between acts 1, 2, and 3. There's enough action and comedy to keep you watching. I never got bored watching this movie. Even if the comedy doesn't keep you there, the action and the plot line will keep you going, and it never lags or gets too quiet or dull. All of the Russian actors were pretty good. None of them went too over the top. Some of them were actually quite sympathetic, particularly the girl who plays Irina and the guy who plays Igor. Overall, I think fans of Bert Kreischer will love this movie, but for everybody else, meh. It's a good attempt at comedy without playing it too safe, but it isn't going to be a comedic movie in the vein of a Hangover or a Tropic Thunder or anything too memorable like that. It's an easy watch with a few laughs. I'm going to give this movie a 6 out of 10. Not something you need to go see in the movie theaters. Wait till it comes out on Netflix, and if you've got a free Sunday evening, it's an easy watch, and I think most people can at least enjoy it if they don't want to think too much. Thanks for watching, guys. That's my review of The Machine. Don't forget to smash that like button if you enjoyed my review. Hit subscribe if you want more. Let me know in the comments if you like my review, and let me know also what movie you want me to review next. I'll talk to you next time.